Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jeffrey Lyles, welcoming you to another edition of Lyles Figure Files. San Diego Comic-Con is just about over, so now it's time to start breaking down the best, the worst, and the kind of ugly parts of all the figure presentations. And I figured I'd start off with Marvel Legends, because this is a pretty weird year for Hasbro with the Marvel Legends brand. Typically, Hasbro has always positioned its top line, its big attraction for Saturday. And this was probably the first time in many years where that distinction was not held and celebrated by Marvel Legends. Instead, it went to the G.I. Joe Classified Squad, and they delivered a really good panel, which I'll talk about later. But for Hasbro, for the Marvel Legends brand, they got shifted over to Friday, which was a weird slot. And I know we've been doing the reveals every 20th of the month. They do the live stream panels, so they didn't really have a need to go all out like we've seen in previous San Diego Comic-Cons. But this still felt, I don't know, a little underwhelming. And I felt that there wasn't that big, oh man, I'm so excited to see this figure in the line. It was still a lot of, okay, here's an updated version of this character. Here's a slightly tweaked version of this figure you've already gotten. And here's a figure that we made no tweaks to whatsoever. We're just pushing it back out again for you. So it was a really mixed bag. I thought there were some things to be like, okay, that's cool. But there was nothing that just blew me away. And I'm noticing a few disturbing trends. I don't know if you guys saw it or felt the same way. But I just kind of wanted to break down my thoughts on it. First up, let's talk about the good, because I feel like I'm going to spend way too much time talking about the bad. But first off, they really did put out a lot of characters for the Disney Plus universe, for those series that I think are really helpful and useful to getting to flesh out your collection a little bit more. So got that classic Loki, and that looks cool. I'm kind of wondering if I want to use this as my default comic base Loki and just kind of swap out the head sculpt from the comic one with this one. But I'm not sure if the paint job is really what I want. And that diaper that classic Loki from the MCU has, I don't know if it kind of works in terms of flowing in with the rest of the comic book figures. But it's a decent looking figure, and really big thing here, he actually has different effects, different power effects. So it's not the starburst, it's not the bubbles. So that's really good. I'm glad to see that, and I'm sure we'll see this 50,000 times with other figures. But we do have a new power effect, so that's always a good thing. We've got a He Who Remains figure, and it has a great likeness to Jonathan Majors. I think that's really good. We're going to see more of him, of course, but I think this figure really turned out great. I'm really happy to see a new Black Panther figure, comic style. He's going to be using the Vulcan base, which means he'll be taller, which means, of course, he won't be small next to the more modern versions of Captain America, the 80th anniversary, the Marvel Legends 20th anniversary one. He'll be eye to eye with them, which is cool because, Black Panther was basically the same height as those guys. And I didn't have a real problem with the Bucky cap standing next to them, but now they've got a new mold and they're going to use it for everything. I'm glad Black Panther got a new update relatively soon. And there's really no subtle hints about it. This is going to be part of the World of Wakanda wave coming up, I assume, late in the year. So I'll be happy to have a new Black Panther to replace my old comic book one by the end of 2022. Then we got the Sentry figure. I think he looks good. The hair sculpt looks really great. I have that old one and think he's okay. He's fine on that Hyperion buck. The Grim Reaper mold probably isn't the best mold they could use for a bigger character like him. I think the Hercules mold is perfect, but this is pretty good. I like the way the yellows pop. And like I said, that head sculpt really looks good. And I like the fact that they included an alternate turning into the Void head sculpt as well. So really good figure. A little bit worried that he's a Walgreens exclusive just because I really continue to have problems getting Jigsaw, and while Sentry isn't an essential villain character for me, I wish I would have preferred he came out in an easier to get avenue, just to update the one I have in my collection with the better one. Then we got some cool new additions like the Human Fly and Razorback. Those are cool, Nothing that I'm really excited about, but I think it's always cool to see new villains, especially new villains to fight Spider-Man. I basically have 2 shelves worth of Spider-Man figures at this point, but I kind of like having one with all the different Spider-Men from the Spider-Verse and then a whole shelf of Spider-Man rogues. But I feel like the way it's going, I'm going to need a 3rd shelf for old school villains and then slightly more modern ones. And I'm not complaining. I think Spider-Man has a great rogues gallery, so I'm really excited about this. I love to see that Spider-Man rogues gallery treatment used for other characters, more Avengers. We could get Count Nefaria in the line finally. I mean, basically he's the DC he's the Marvel Superman who's evil that fights the Avengers. I'd love to see him as a big time Avengers enemy, but not just yet. And I think that was the no questions asked, really good showings for San Diego Comic-Cons with the Marvel Legends reveals. I've had some problems, some issues with some of the other ones. I like the tease of Robbie Reyes and the Ghost Rider. That's fun. That's a really nice HasLab option because we can get a big car. I'm sure those tiers are going to push me over the edge to go, hey, you should buy this. I'm not really tempted by getting Robbie in his car, but I feel like everything else they tack on there is going to make me go, yeah, I need to get this. And I do appreciate Hasbro holding off, kind of like I asked earlier, where they stagger these releases so we're not getting hit with one HasLab and, like not getting hammered by 2 or 3 HasLabs at one time. So it looks like when the His Tank one wraps, then we'll see this Marvel Legend one, and I'm fine with that because it gives us a little bit of time, gives our wallets a chance to recover and take a breath before we get on to the next thing. So I really do appreciate that. Now I need to get into all these questions, all these issues that I had from these reveals. One of the Disney Plus showings that we got was a continuation of the What If series. So we're getting Howard the Duck, and we're getting an accessory with him in addition to the Build-A-Figure part, and that's the Scott Lang head, the detached head in the little globe. That's part of that Zombies episode, and these two weren't really interacting, but they figured, I suppose, Howard's a lame figure by himself, especially since he only has limited articulation. I'm still confused why Hasbro keeps trying to roll out these partially articulated smaller figures when they've got the technology to make figures stand, sit, whatever. Howard's a character, you need him standing, but you should be able to have him sitting down on a bar stool having a drink, and this figure's just, he can't do it, and that's really annoying at this point. I mean, these figures aren't $20 anymore, so Howard the Duck for $25 with a detached head isn't good enough. And I'm just kind of frustrated with these mini statue figures that they keep rolling out. We got little Wolverine in that Mojo set. We had the Spider-Ham figure that was really poorly articulated, and now we're getting Howard the Duck. And before, when they were 19, it was it's not a great deal, but okay, whatever. But $25 for a half articulated figure, a head, and a Build-A-Figure part, that screams wait until it hits $10. I can't imagine there's going to be some Disney Plus Build-A-Figure that's going to be so tempting that I have to bite on a $25 Howard the Duck. And I feel like Hasbro really just needs to start going, how do we increase the value to these figures? Because the way they're doing it, it's just not good enough. And then, speaking of not good enough, the paint applications, they're really suffering. He Who Remains is a really great looking figure, but it's like so basic, so simple with the paint apps. It's just kind of missing some depth, some layering, just something more to just make it look more than a toy. And I think for these MCU Disney Plus figures, they really need to stand out and be a higher level than the comic book figures. I think for the most part, they can kind of get away with it with a lack of shading, lack of details that show up with the paint with the comic book figures. That's not the case with these MCU guys. I mean, you put He Who Remains next to some of these earlier MCU figures where they were going all out with the paint shading and paint washing, he's going to look real plain, and I don't think that's a nice shift in directions either. So we're getting a higher price point, less paint apps, less articulation in some cases. Not a fan, not really enjoying it, not loving it. Now let's talk about that Beast figure. Beast gets a retro presentation, which means no Build-A-Figure part. And instead of $20, now he's going to be $33. And I am so confused. So confused why this figure that we paid $20 for originally. He's already had a retro figure in that gray coat, gray paint scale. Now we're getting one with a lab coat. And it's a soft goods coat, which is great. He should have that, because that's a throwback to the old X-Men box set. And I like to see, Hasbro taking steps to pay homage to older Toy Biz deals. But I don't understand so many things about this $33 for Beast here. First off, he's got the same angry head sculpt that we've gotten before. And while that works for Beast, I would have much rather had two original head sculpts. We got the calm, serene one, so he can look up, he can do his examinations of all these potions and formulas he's concocting. That's great. But I still don't understand why I didn't get the smiling Beast head with this set. So getting Beast with the blue smiling head from the gray figure that for some reason they're still not putting out in blue. I don't understand why we didn't get that. Especially when we already got the angry sculpt. And not that would have justified a $34 price for a figure, but I could have seen, well, it's got two new head sculpts, it's got a soft goods coat, and it's got a couple new accessories. But it still feels like Hasbro is nickel and diming us and trying to slowly get us to these perfect versions of figures and making us pay for every figure along the way. And I say making, nobody's got a gun to our head, but it's kind of like, is this going to be the best Beast figure we got? Because, it's a problem. And that smiling Beast also had pupils, and that's not something that Jim Lee did in any of his versions of Beast, even when he was not fighting enraged in action. But I kind of think that would have really enhanced the value, because if we don't get another Beast, the smiling blue one could have worked just fine with the Avengers. And I feel like that was a real missed opportunity, because you put that in there, you've got your studious head sculpt, you've got a soft goods coat, maybe that's worth $34, because it's like, okay, I won't need another Beast. I can keep this angry head sculpt with Beast, and I can put him with my I can put him with my X-Men. I can take the studious, thoughtful head sculpt, put him with the Jim Lee one, and then have my new one with the smiling Beast head and put him with the Avengers and put him with my Safari Wonder Man that I'm still waiting on. But this was a really odd decision, really weird execution. I'm just wondering why Hasbro won't go, you know what, these figures are getting more expensive. We're putting a figure that was once $20 and we got to make them $35. Why don't we make the best execution of this guy, so people will get what they want, what they need in one shot, as opposed to us hoping that they'll bite again for a third version of the Beast when we could have gotten a better one now. So this is really confusing to me, and I'm not a fan. Speaking of things I'm not a fan of, these continued executions of Spider-Man in the classic colors and box sets. So we had that anniversary edition Spider-Man, the retro one, and a lot of you all have told me that you missed out on them. And I feel bad because it's such a great figure. Although it's still got those janky pin deals, so the red is sticking out in the blue areas. It's not perfect, but it's a really good figure. But Hasbro is still kind of like, we're going to make you pay for it to get the version you really, really want. So this time we've got a Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends box set, and this one is confusing on so many levels. They've revamped Firestar slightly. The original Firestar we got had the mask changed up a little bit different. So we had the Amazing Friends version, and then we had more of a wilder hair sculpt going for more of a classic take that you could put with your new Warrior figures. I think one really cool thing they could have done with this set, just to mix it up and maybe tempt us to buy it, would have been to swap the hair sculpts on the alternate mask. So that way it's like, okay, if you really wanted this version, the calm one with that different mask, you could do it, and without having to do it yourself. Hasbro just does it. They've got the technology, they can do it with no problem. And I think that would have been a nice alteration to Firestar. My biggest problem with this set though is, once again, Iceman. I just feel like Hasbro can't get him right. And he seems like a character who's so easy, so obvious to get right, but for whatever reason, they continue to botch the execution of this guy. And I went into Google because I'm like, well, what is it that Hasbro is doing? Am I missing something? No. So you pop in Iceman, Spider-Man, and his amazing friends. Do that on a Google image search, and you'll see the first few images smiling Bobby. And that's not hard. The dude was always smiling. In the cartoon, in the comic book, he's a happy character. And for whatever reason, Hasbro continues to give us these stern head sculpts for Bobby. Like he's really pissed off and he's super serious for no reason. And the dude is like, he's got an angular head sculpt, and I don't know what the problem is in terms of executing that, but we continue to get these rounded head sculpts that don't resemble Jim Lee's artwork, Walt Simonson's artwork, Spider-Man and his amazing friends designs. It's just this weird amalgam of different looks of Iceman that don't work for anything. And they gave him a paint wash to kind of give this cell shaded look of the cartoon, which is weird because they don't do it with anybody else. So it's just, I don't know, this whole set is like a swing and a miss for me. It's like they keep trying, but they keep botching it. They can't get it right, and I'm just confused why it's so hard to get these three characters executed properly to get out to us. So the search for the ideal, the best Iceman figure still continues, and it's so weird. They botched the Age of Apocalypse one. They gave us the modern Age of Apocalypse Bobby. We got the one with the belt that's sort of like Jim Lee, but then it's got that weird seam and that kind of mean, ugly head sculpt. The original one was spiky hair. It was sort of modern. It didn't fit with much of anything. I don't get it. Hopefully this fourth Bobby will work, because, man, what we've gotten so far has just been terrible. And it's a small kind of thing, but we got the Black Panther's Secret Service, the Hot Zra. I'm just going to say like I know how to pronounce it, because who does? But I think if you look, do another Google search, you'll see most of the time they're a little bit geared up. And I like the fact that they've got the slots, the deals on their ankles and their forearms, just to show a little difference from Black Panther. But I really would have loved for Hasbro to throw in some pouches. And they did give him some guns, which is great. But I would have loved to have seen, a couple pouches on their waist, maybe their ankles, just to give that sense that they're not as good as Black Panther. They need all this weaponry and all this stuff, and they're just not going to go hand in hand like T'Challa. So I feel like that was kind of missing, but it wasn't as big a deal as some other issues. I just would have preferred them to go a little bit more with that detail on those characters. I am happy that they're making them, and hopefully in enough quantity that I could build a pretty decent army, maybe 4 or 5 of them, especially with these prices now. But I think these are pretty decent figures. I just wish they'd gone just a little bit further to gear them up some more. Now, another thing, and I'm almost done with all of my rants on these Marvel Legend reveals we've got. Hasbro showed a dual pack kind of situation where we got the Tesseract that, I'm sure if you really wanted it, you would have already gotten a premium roleplay Tesseract. Now they're including the Marvel Legends Loki from the Loki series. And the original figure in that first wave of Disney Plus figures had the jacket that he wore for like half episode. And then for the rest of it, he had the jacket off and he had his sword and all this stuff. But now we're finally getting that figure, but you have to get a Tesseract to go along with it. And I feel like that is such a weird forced deal to make customers who've been supporting all these lines buy a premium set they didn't ask for to get a figure that they probably want for their Loki display. And to do that with the main character of the series really seems cheap and really seems like a direction they should never take with any other figures, because premium stuff, all their premium role play, is basically $70. I mean, you catch it later on clearance for maybe that price, but it's not cheap. And I don't feel like we're already paying $25 for figures that aren't worth $25. Don't make us pay more. I mean, that's just weird and not a good move. There's so many decisions that they're making right now with Marvel Legends that I'm just like, come on guys, you can do better. This is not better. So Definitely don't like that. Hopefully this is a one and done and it sells terribly. So Hasbro goes, we should never do that again. And I think it's going to be really bad when later on, probably when Loki season 2 comes out, we get this Loki in a standalone packaging. Like, hey, here you go. This is the figure you guys wanted without the Tesseract. And for everybody that does buy this set and gets the Tesseract, they're not going to be feeling too happy about it. So we also had the reveal that Galactus Heralds 2-pack. This was an interesting one because we got a new Herald, the Fallen one, and I have no idea who this character was, but he looks cool, and I'm happy to add him to my Heralds floating around Galactus in my display. Then we got Terrax, and I'd mentioned him a few episodes back when I was talking about Hasbro Marvel Legends that need an upgraded version, and it's kind of weird because you see Sentry get an update, and he was pretty decent. I mean, his figure wasn't terrible, but it had an old buck, and sure, it could stand to get revised. But Terrax was even older. He's a figure that would benefit from just a few enhancements to the articulation, maybe some fresh new sculpting somewhere. And instead, we got the same figure. And it's weird because Sentry and Terrax are kind of like, okay, maybe on the same level of importance, but why does one get a new head sculpt, a better body, and the other one is just maybe no one will notice that we're just rolling the exact same figure out? I think that was a really odd choice. I think a lot of you out there think so too, because that set is not sold out on Pulse yet. And I don't know, I'm kind of feeling like you guys could do a lot better than this. This rolling out old figures from back in the Stone Ages of Marvel Legends. I think that was the second or third Build-A-Figure when Hasbro got the license, so it's been long overdue for a new Terrax figure. And again, on that episode, I've remarked, I said, hey, that Terrax figure is pretty good. It was pretty good for the time, held up pretty well even now, but if you're going to put him out again, make some improvements, fix the figure up, give him new head sculpts, something. I mean, Uluk, that San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, got new head sculpts, got new accessories, and it's like, okay, hey, you need this figure, even though it was an exclusive. And, you know, people like me were like, man, he was one of the reasons I got that set. Now people can just get him on his own. And he got a new head sculpt to make it worthwhile. And Terrax doesn't deserve to get at least a new head sculpt. Just something else to make it worth buying that set. I'm sure eventually I'll get it because I don't have Terrax. But I just feel bad for everybody who's already gotten it. And it's like, I want Fallen one, but I've already got this Terrax figure. And I built him getting all these figures to get him in the first place. So not a really good deal. It's something Hasbro needs to take a serious look at, and maybe there's still time to fix this setup before they put it out. Maybe it's a surprise. We've listened to you all. We have all these new parts and pieces, and here's our new improved Terrax. So hopefully that does happen, because rolling out an old figure from a decade ago, not the way to go. And finally, we got some more members of the Symbiote Squad and Agony and Riot, and I'm just kind of perplexed because it feels like there's certain teams that the Marvel Legends squad is like, yeah, we got to get this team completed. They'll release 2, they'll get 1 consistently. I just felt like I don't have a problem with these symbiotes. And I feel like people who like that Life Foundation group, I'm really happy for you all because you're getting a team completed. But I feel like they're higher profile teams that are 1, 2 members away from getting completed that probably should be up a little bit higher on the let's knock this team out than the symbiotes. Because I mean, the Spider-Man line is basically going to last as long as the Marvel Legends line lasts, and maybe even beyond. And I feel like there's always room to slot those characters in there, but you know, in case people are like, you know what, I'm tired of paying $25, $30 for a figure, I'm out. We need to start getting those 1, 2 members on the team left completed before the bottom drops out and people are like, yeah, I'm out of this, I'm done, I'm over with this. One character I did not mention that I probably should have added is Rachel Summers' Phoenix 2. She completes Excalibur. She's the only member of Excalibur missing of the original squad. She also helps flesh out the John Romita Jr. era of punk era of the X-Men. That would have been another figure worth including. But you know, I'm not just biased on this. They're several teams that need one or two members to get completed. And you know my preference, you know my number one choice on this, but I'm going to hold off on him because you know what I'm talking about. But Alpha Flight could get completed with Marina. If you want to also add in Box, you can there too. The second version of X Factor gets knocked out with Wolfsbane. Farrell completes the Rob Liefeld original X-Force. Namorita, Marvel Boy / Justice, or just, head, cowl, piece. They complete the original New Warriors. Add in Silhouette if you want to be risky and throw in a third member. And of course, Banshee to wrap up the original Giant Size X-Men. So there are lots of, I don't know, that's a puzzling deal because I feel like sometimes toy companies and the guys selecting teams and characters get fixated on one team that they want to see completed, just because that's their team and squad. And I'm not saying you got to complete the Giant Size X-Men, you got to complete X-Force, you got to complete the New Warriors before any team. I just like to see when you start a team, keep working to get that team completed. Don't go onto another figure tangent and go, oh, we got distracted. We never got around to knocking out Pharaoh. We never got around to Wolfsbane. We never got around to Marina or Namorita and Justice, Marvel Boy. We didn't get Banshee knocked out because we were so focused on all these other teams we're not going to get finished. The Thunderbolts still need a lot of team members to get completed. And speaking of teams, we could just knock out the original Power Man and Iron Fist, get those classic versions of those guys out too. They're new defenders, they're defender characters that could get completed as well to finish knockout teams. I just kind of feel like Marvel Legends has gone on for a really nice long amount of time, and of course, and eventually it's going to have to end at some point. And I'd love to see teams get completed before that ending comes, especially when they're so close to getting teams completed. Now, I know we're probably never going to see the Serpent Society completed. Maybe we won't get Doctor Doom's entire Secret Wars squad, but I just feel like there's teams that could get knocked out, could get wrapped up before it's too late. And I just like to see them cross off teams because there's still so many more. The Outback Squad of the X-Men is another one, but of course they're just like one or two members away. Armored Psylocke, Shirtless Colossus, Rogue. So I guess there's 3 on that team, but it allows us to complete more teams. 3 versus another squad that's getting team members knocked out, but maybe at a slower rate than I would like. I don't know. Let me know what you think. So those are my thoughts on this Marvel Legends reveal. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more just over the course of the next few months. PulseCon is coming. I fully expect to see some characters that I want knocked out. And hopefully we'll see some exciting Build-A-Figures. Maybe that Disney Plus wave that makes it a no-brainer that I'm going to get whatever part is included with that Howard the Duck. So that's all of my ranting and raving and a little bit of praise for these reveals from Hasbro's Marvel Legends San Diego Comic-Con. Let me know what you think. Are you as kind of salty about these reveals as I am? Or you think, hey, it's good enough. I'm really happy to get the Life Foundation symbiotes further along. And I don't really care about completing Alpha Flight, X-Force, X-Factor, New Warriors, Giant Size X-Men, etc. So let me know what you think. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back real soon because I have so much more excitement to talk about with the G.I. Joe Classified series brand. Alright, so thanks as always for watching. This episode of Lost Figure Files has been filed.